Hey guys, it's Carolyn Cromings, and welcome back to the Quit Getting Screwed Construction Podcast, where we talk all the ways not to get screwed in the construction industry. And a big part of that is learning how to run a business, right? And running a business that you don't have to be involved with every day. And I know as construction business owners, a lot of you are out there running projects, trying to run the office. And so today we're going to kind of give you a different perspective and maybe a way to step back from that. So today I have with me Josh Fonger. He is the CEO of WTS, Work the System. Good morning, Josh. How are you?
Glad to be here. Happy.
Thank you so much for being here. So tell me a little bit about what is WTS Enterprises?
Yeah, well, it's based on, or for those watching this on video, this book, Work the System, which is written by my previous business partner, Sam Carpenter. And really, it details the approach that Sam took from working 100-hour work weeks down to 2-hour work weeks, and then having his income go up 20 times in the process. And so he walks through basically how he shifted his mindset, his strategy, his principles, and ultimately his systems. Hence, the book is called "The Work the System," and that's what the book is about. It was written 15 years ago, and ever since then, that's what I've been doing: is doing the coaching and consulting associated with that. And so, small businesses up to 500 million, somewhere in that range, helping them take the principles, the philosophy, and build it into their companies and help them grow. And a lot of them have been in the construction and trades and subcontractor arena. And so excited to be here and share how it is implemented into those areas and hopefully help some people out.
Gotcha. So how did you get into this? How did you get into this area or this particular book?
Oh, no one cares about me. So in terms of me, no, my undergraduate degree is in architecture, and I got a master's in business, and I wanted to be in real estate development. 2007 and 8, 9, that range didn't work out so well for that career path. I got laid off and had to find something else to do. And instead of taking an 80% pay decrease, I had several kids at the time. I decided to switch careers, got into consulting, and at that time worked with flooring store owners. So anyone who's familiar with Carpet Ones and Flooring Americas, I would be their consultant guy. And so I was flying around from company to company, helping them with their inside sales, outside sales, their forecasting, helping some of them through bankruptcy, and really getting a chance to be on the ground and watch companies, small family businesses, grow and help them through that. And then after that, getting connected with Sam Carpenter, because what I realized is that I would, in quotes, fix a company, and then I would leave and then come back 6 months or a year later, and all those bad habits were coming back. Everyone that I trained, everything that we built would kind of fall apart. And the reason being is we never took the time to actually document the processes and procedures, actually how things worked. And so it never translated to people's heads down to standard work that was going to continuously stick around. And so, as Sam Carpenter says, people come and go, but systems stay. And I realized I needed to kind of change my approach to consulting. And so maybe it was like 13, 14 years ago when Sam and I connected, and I did some consulting work with him. And ever since then, I've been out there in the field doing podcasts like this and running training and coaching myself, helping companies grow that way.
Awesome. So tell me, what is business performance architecture?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the title I coined for myself because I like to design and architect and orchestrate how things operate. And most companies, it's more of it's by someone's gut. It's more based on reactionary approach, and so I prefer to actually design where you want to go. Okay. And then that's the architecture, and then performance actually help it perform, right? Instead of, again, purely based on people's efforts. If you architect it right, the business can perform, and the owner wouldn't necessarily need to be the one doing the work. And so that lines up with again the work system method, and everything we do is that for a lot of business owners, they build a business around them, and therefore they can't ever leave. If they go on vacation, they get sick, they have to take care of someone in their family for an extended period of time, the company just will crumble, fall apart. And they often have a hard time retiring or selling the company or opening up new locations, scaling. And so I try to get them to step back, and we actually build, architect a solution that's going to get them to that next level, because they typically run out of time, energy, money. They hit a plateau, and they realize, I can't run it this way anymore. I'm going to get stuck, and so they have to change the way their approach, and that's what I do.
Gotcha. So what is the first step? Like if somebody were to come to you and say like, I don't want to work in my business anymore. I want to work on it. Like what are the first
Uh-huh.
steps to go down this path? What does it look like?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the first step is, where are the fires? Usually the owner has some major fires going on that I try
Mhm.
to tackle first. So whatever those things are. So I always do an assessment first, and whether it's business or personal or financial, whatever it is, like there's some things that are preventing them from actually working on their business, and I want to clear those things out first. So whatever those things are, we take care of those. And
Okay.
then we shift the way they see their business. And so it's a mindset shift, and that can happen pretty quickly. It's what the book is about, is seeing your world as a collection of systems. And
Okay.
so we go through and analyze their work day, their work week, their work month, and figure out which systems can they start to automate, start to delegate, start to delete, and start to, again, build some capacity. And once they have some capacity built, then we want them to clearly lay out a company strategy and company principles, because if you have that strategy and principles, it's going to continuously keep you and your team, as you're building up a team, on a straight line. Again, the key to growing a business that scales, that lasts, that doesn't need you there, is that it can't be based on you being present. It needs to be based on a clear strategy and principles that are always present, right? They can always do the work for you of guiding the company. And so we want to get that instilled first. A lot of companies have something
Mhm.
already, and it's more about dusting that off, clarifying it, and then making sure that everyone follows it, believes in it, and is abiding by it. And then beyond that, it's the actual procedures. And so we'll break up the work into all the standard parts.
Okay.
How do you answer the phone? How do you make that sales call? How do you deliver the material? How do you track the material? Like all the different things that actually happens in your business,
Hmm.
there needs to be a way to do that, a best way. And that needs to be a way that's not complicated and requires 20 years experience. Ideally, it's something simple and is easily transferable, so that you can bring on someone with the prerequisite skills off the street to do that tomorrow. And it's a big part of what I do is try to simplify the work, all the work, and so that your team can do it better and faster at higher quality, at a higher profit margin, and so that you can bring on additional team members that maybe they don't have 20 years experience and a bunch of letters behind their name. They can just come on board and just start doing it because you've simplified it so much, and that's a big part of the process. And so if we can get someone to that level, then it's about keeping them engaged, and ideally the owner or the leaders are able to delegate more and more of the management and the leadership and the measurement over to the next in line, and then they're able to have the breathing room to work on business expansion, or possibly new innovations, or possibly a new business altogether. But they're able to do that because they're not so bogged down. And every company I work with is in a different phase of that. Some of them just starting out, they've got a couple employees, they're just beginning, and others, they have hundreds. And so we're really, we're tweaking, we're fine tuning, we're really trying to accelerate things that are already put in place, but maybe they're just not refined yet.
Gotcha. So, I mean, you're sure you deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, obviously. So, where do they give you the most pushback when you start in this? I'm curious. Is it the mindset? Is it the systems? Where do you, from your experience in dealing with
Uh,
this?
yeah, well, the biggest pushback is that everyone has old habits, right? Old habits that have taken them to where they are,
Yeah.
and they've worked to generate income and a lifestyle that's more or less worked for them for a certain number of years or decades. And so it's about saying, hey, what you did to get there is not going to take you to that next level, and we need to start to stop doing some of those habits that you've done before. Like I have an accounting company right now where he's always worked until 5, taking a break, and then worked again till like, I don't know, 7 p.m. till 11 p.m. every night. Like that structure of you like actually doing the work, even though you have 8 other employees, you have to shift it. You have to change. You have to actually you have to be an owner not a worker bee in your business. And that's a totally different way of working, right? And so it's I'm working with an electrician right now. It's the same kind of thing. Is there? He's used to doing all of the sales himself and doing all the certifications himself. And well, if you're doing the sales and certifications, like how is your company going to grow, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have to train somebody in these skills. And so, anyways, it's really breaking habits, and that's very general, like breaking habits. That's general.
Mhm.
So I go through the tedious exercise of actually figuring out every single thing the owner does, and then I say, well, how about this sliver? I was working with this home flipper, and one of the things is he would, whenever his teams at the different homes were having issues, he would run off to Home Depot and pick up materials or work with suppliers. And I said, could someone else drive the truck and pick up the materials? He's like, well, I know how to do it. I know where the stuff is, and I know the guy. And I'm like, I bet someone else could drive the truck and get the materials. And then we just found a driver to pick up materials and built a little system for doing that. And all of a sudden he saves, I don't know, like 8 hours a week of his life.
Damn.
And he just never realized that. And so it's okay. Yes, you're busy. Everyone's busy. Let's just see, what are you busy doing? And it could be personal things. Maybe you're driving all around to drive your kids to and from school and making their meals. A lot of folks are in that situation, and because entrepreneurs have flexibility. And it's like, hey, you know what? I could carpool. I could hire a driver. I could have these meals delivered. That would save me 6 hours a week. And then it's realizing, okay, there actually is capacity in your schedule if we just shift it and delegate some things. And then also, there's all these things that owners do that no one's doing in your business, right? So you're missing out on all of that business development, all that innovation, all of that management, all of the fine tuning that an owner should be doing. No one's doing it, right? And so the issue is you have a ship with no one at the at the helm there. So that's a big issue. And so we make those shifts, and then lo and behold, and this is typically the order it works. Is that the stress goes down first because they realize, oh, I really could do this. This actually is going to work. And second, after the stress, is the time goes up. Like, oh, I got some time. What should I do with this? What should I do this time? And I had a commercial appraiser where he's like, he had all this extra time. He said, well, now what do I do? And so he joined a band and started, road riding, cycling. But then after that got boring. After about 6 months, he opened up 2 new locations, right? So he realized he had all this time. It could actually really grow the business. He said he got sick of seeing his wife so much. So, or she got sick of him, one or the other. But the point is, so it ends up being stress, then time, and then they, ultimately more money, right? Is they realize, okay, well, gosh, this company can get a lot bigger, and then they usually make more money. And then the next push that I work with them on, what are you going to do with that more money, right? Is it going to be business expansion? Is it going to be paying down debt? Is it going to be opening new locations? Is it going to be more charitable things? There's always these big opportunities that they haven't ever seen before, but once they have the capacity and the time and the money, they realize there's a lot of things they could do in their life they never really dreamed of. And so that's what makes my work fun, is I get to watch owners go through that transformation. And some it's faster than others, and some it's more of a straight line. But it's not the book Work the System is not like some idea that no one's ever heard of before, right? It's very standard. It's, anyone who's got a large company has done it. And it's more about putting it into very simple language and very simple steps, so that people don't need to have an advanced degree to do it. My companies, who HVAC companies and painting companies and plumbers, and like they don't have advanced MBAs, but their teams get it, makes sense, and they can do it. Yeah. Right. And that's the background of Sam Carpenter. He never got an advanced degree. His associate's degree is in forestry. Right. It's just like he liked to be out in the woods with a chainsaw. So he calls it a working man's or a working woman's philosophy. It just works, and it works in the real world.
That's pretty awesome. So one thing I know that I see at many entrepreneurs is, how do you get them to give up? They want to control everything. And I think a lot of it comes from, right, I know this works and I've done it this way forever. How do you work with them on the element of control and trusting their people to do? And even though there's going to be problems, but What do you do? What's your?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, so again, it's not a straight line, and there's a whole chapter in the book called "Control is a Good Thing," right? Being out of control is worse, right? So being in control is a good thing, and so that's what we preach that, and we want them to know that you're trying to take all the elements of your company that are chaotic and bring them into order. It's a good thing.
Mhm.
But the way to do it is not necessarily you having to babysit every single thing that happens, right? It's better to teach a philosophy of
Mhm.
that, which is the strategic objective, which we help, a culture of that, and then to give people controlling documents to actually hold a standard to. So if everyone just said, "Hey, we want to make good sales calls," that's good. All right, now, but what is a good sales call? Well, it has these elements. Well, let's go a step further. And actually, write down what a good sales call is, and let's write down, what not to do, what to do, how to do it. Let's actually write it down, and then what we do in our coaching and consulting is we actually engage the people who are, let's just say, doing the sales calls, and they get their ideas as well, so they buy into it, and so then they can more self-police what happens because they actually created the document, and then we'll set up protocols to check, so actually check through numbers or check through secret shoppers or check through some other method that brings some visibility and lets them know, hey, this matters, your work matters, and we're going to have some visibility on it so that we can either come up with a better system that's easier, faster, or we can push everyone to that highest quality. And in Sam's company, they own an answering service, and so they went from making mistakes on every 50 or 100 phone calls to now they make one reported error every 15,000 phone calls. So they were really tweaked and modified and improved their systems, and so now they can go out to the marketplace and say we are the best as an answering service, we are the highest quality, and they charge for it, right? So they charge 2 to 3 times what everyone else charges, and their customers stick around with them, average of 5 years, whereas that industry, it's usually a very high turnover rate. And so they did that by continuously focusing in on the systems, the systems of what they do. And for a lot of companies, just any trade, whether they clean pools, they're painters, they roofers, whatever it is, they might think that what they do, they're good at it because they do it often. But if
Mhm.
they sit down and look at the separate steps of which they do, they can always find ways to improve it. They can always find ways to make it better. But it requires focus, analysis, and getting to the details. And usually people are so busy running in circles that they don't ever get to the details of the work.
Yeah. So I know what that feels like. Always in it, and um, always trying to work on making it better, but not really. And even those people who want to work on making it better don't know exactly where to start or how to start or how to do it the right way. Like, I'm sure an outside opinion, like especially like you're so in your business, you couldn't see a better way to do it if you wanted to. So give me some examples of
Yeah.
some of the things that you've seen that have been time saving. I'm sure the businesses you've walked into of how they could streamline it or make it much more efficient.
Yeah, it's usually how do I want to put this? It's usually the little things, right? I'm just thinking if I got a client right now that owns several tennis facilities, and they've been doing tennis facilities at multiple locations for 30 years. It's kind of like a legacy business. And I said, well, let's just look at the way you do assessments when a new tennis player comes in. And they realized that just by looking through the steps, they were wasting time. It was taking way too long. Secondly, they weren't upselling any private lessons. They weren't providing any meaningful report card after the assessment so they could charge for the assessment. So they weren't charging for the assessment. They weren't upselling additional services afterwards or rackets. And it was taking too long. And they had their most expensive tennis pro doing the assessments of these
Free
students.
assessment.
Yeah, free assessments. And I said, so like, we just looked at one thing here. Like, I mean, they have 70 employees. Like, this is just one. Like, and we I don't know, we couldn't even translate it, but it's a ton of money right there just in one thing that we looked at. So, a manufacturing facility, another quick example is, he said, we've been doing this manufacturing, they do small parts manufacturer in Michigan, for like 40 years. Like he's been doing it a long time. And I said, let's just look at one thing. What's one thing you do every day? Let's look at it. And he said, well, we've got a first shift, which is 20 people on the machines, and we got a second shift. And so let's just look at the shift change. How do you do a shift change? And so he wrote the procedure for how to end a shift and how to start a shift. That's it. And there's a 15-minute overlap on the two, where it's paying payroll for everybody for 15 minutes. And we realized that shift change actually needed to only be 5 minutes instead of 15 minutes. And it's been a 15-minute shift change for decades. And we did the value of what he was spending for essentially no work, no production being done. And it's $100,000 a year.
Damn.
Every year. And I said, that was an inefficiency you probably should have caught a few decades ago. And again, it's by getting hyper focus on the work you're doing and seeing, and it can be fun, right? Like, how can we do this better? How can we do this faster? How do we improve the experience? How do we, charge more for this? How do we maximize the performance of the various things that we do? And again, it's raising the standard with that strategy, and it's up leveling the culture, and then it's getting them to be engaged in the systems. And it can be, it might sound very tedious to people listening to this, but it actually can be really enjoyable. And people want to improve. They just don't know how. Yeah. And they want to be a part of a team that is a high performance team. It's more enjoyable, right? So once you get people excited about that, you'll notice good people want to work in your business because it's high performing. And you notice the bad people, it kind of self-select out, or you can more easily remove them. And so depending on where your company is in the spectrum, there usually is a shift of staff that happens during this process.
Yes.
And so, when I'm consulting a company, we just decide, how fast do you want that shift to happen? Like, do you want to kind of bring people along and a couple people leave, or do you want to go really fast and then we have to change over the staff? But some people are not going to like this. Like, they like just kind of goofing off. They like doing it however they want to. They don't really want to change. They don't really care about high performance. They don't really care about the company. So how fast do we want to remove those people? And so that's usually a part of the process as well.
Because once you have accountability, a lot of people that got away with things a little before, they don't like change. They've gotten this, they got in a rut, and once you change stuff up, it gets really interesting.
It does. Yeah, it does. And so, but the reality is, so part of my work is to, I've worked with over 1,000 companies through this. So I get to see that, theory is great, business books are great, but you have a reality, right? Maybe your brother works there and you can't fire your brother, or maybe your uncle is a partner. And so there's certain things you have to navigate and work around. And, and there's certain roles within a business that are less engaged in the day-to-day processes that you can actually separate and still move towards a more systematic, more efficient, more scalable business. And so that's part of what I do too, is that we call it quarantining. We kind of set apart somebody and say, hey, you're on this island, and we're going to give you a certain amount of freedom to do things however you want to do them. But when you move back onto the mainland, you got to do it this way, because this is the way it's going to be most efficient, most effective, most productive. And they get that, right? And that tends to work. But
gotcha.
The less we can do that, the better.
So at least you're intentional about saying, hey, I know you're over here doing it this way. Well, we're changing because we're improving, right?
Yeah.
And you always see those people fall off as soon as there's some people that just don't want to work that hard or are not interested in improvement. And it can be very disruptive to the business once you do that. Once you keep changing, you keep leveling up.
Yeah, well, exactly. And the owner can decide how much of that they want to put up with. But if you put up with too much, then you're going to demoralize the staff that really is excited about the changes, and they're not going to want to stick around either. So that's come down to leadership. But if you put your leadership in writing, which is the strategic objective and operating principles, then you and everyone else has a standard that is not changeable, is immovable. But if just you, the person, are the standard bearer of the strategy and the principles, then they're malleable. They have good days, they have bad days. They have days that they're sick, they have days they're on vacation. So, clearest example was a company I worked with in California, where they had this guy who just an amazing guy, very charismatic, loved his employees, everyone loved him, and he grew multiple locations. And there's a flooring store, and maybe they're doing like $10 million a year. And as he grew, he said he wanted to, step back, spend more time with his wife and his kids, travel more. And, for years he did that. And then all of a sudden, and I worked with him during his, reorganization, bankruptcy, but things fell apart. Like everything fell apart. Cancer in the business was everywhere. And it was because he was the standard of values and ethics and morals and hard work. But when he wasn't there, everyone just kind of brought their own baggage with them, whatever it was, some good, some bad, a mix. And so we had to write down, here is the standard, here are the principles, here is the way to do it. And that's what finally turned things around, was actually having it not just be him, but having it be in writing. And so that's a big part of getting the work system method into a business, is actually getting it down to paper.
Yeah, having it written down so everybody can see it. So what is a yo-yo business, and how can you identify if you have one?
Yeah, I came up with this term, and this was not a client, just a buddy who owned a landscaping company. And we did coffee, and he was like all excited about getting to work together. And I said, hey, I don't work with my friends, but you can buy me coffee and we'll talk. And he didn't do anything about it, because most people, they take advice, so they don't do anything with it. But he had just amazing amazing sales seasons, and then low valleys or droughts, and then sales and then droughts. It's just up and down, up and down, up and down. And I see this in a lot of companies, and it comes down to, hey, we're in a valley, so let's go make some sales. And the owner gets busy, outside sales, inside sales, calling on customers. They rally and get some work going. But then they realize no one's going to be able to do the work. So then they start doing the work, and they get busy doing the work, and things are good because, hey, money's coming in the door, things are great. And then, whether, depending on your sales cycle, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's, 6 months. And then things start to go down, and then they go down faster and faster. And they're like, whoa, someone's going to make some sales. And they go back out there, make some sales, and they go up and down, up and down. They kind of stay at this plateau level. And whenever it's at the highest level, the quality of work tends to suffer, because everyone's so busy, and they intend to hire a bunch of people to bring on to do the work, who also are not well trained, because there's no systems for onboarding or training. And again, no sales are happening. And so at the highest peaks, everyone's usually busy. Things are getting delegated away, but they're more like abdicated than delegated, because no one really knows what the best way is to do something. And then again, when things go down, then there's the cuts, and everyone's trying to make sales again. So that yo-yo level, when I'm looking at companies' financial statements, whenever I work with a company, I try to get a couple of years and see what's happened. I can typically see that, whether there's a seasonality to it or not, but they've hit that point, whether it's 1 million or 5 million or whatever that number is. Like, that's kind of where we plateaued. Like, we don't have the model to go beyond that. We go down, we go up, we go down, we go up, and part of it's market driven, part of it's seasonality, but ultimately they're not going anywhere. They're just gonna stay at that level. And I want to get them to realize that, and again, change the structure.
So I have a question as a business owner, and who's all very interested in having my business run without me. But then there's this side of business development and everything that calls for personal branding, that needs your face. So how do those two work together, where you can still be the face but not be? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, in your case, I mean, running a law firm, I had a client who I've worked with a lot of law firms who this was a big part of it, was personal branding, and they were a bankruptcy attorney, and they actually were in Houston or Dallas, one of those areas. But the approach he took was personal branding through scalable media. Okay. So in this case, it was through newsletters and physical and digital newsletters, and through that, he was able to take his voice and expand, and also did radio. So if he was going to be the voice or the face of the business, it was, how do we put him in places that had the most visibility, the most eyeballs, without having to have him, do the work or close the sales. And so I think that's something to think about, is always figuring out at what place does that person need to be. I'm working with a temporary construction company in New York City, and same kind of thing. People love to work with the owner. He's very charismatic. He's brilliant about design and just doing some really really unique builds out there in New York City. And he thinks he's got to be everywhere. And I'm
Yeah.
explaining like, well, you don't need to make the first contact. You don't need to set up the appointment. You don't need to do the research before the appointment. And you don't need to run the numbers after the appointment. And you don't even need to do the design. But you actually have to be there during that sit down meeting to build the rapport and the connection. So there are a lot of elements that go into business development, but there's only a key essentials, like actually shaking the person's hand, like that you need to be there for.
Yeah.
But the other elements, once they like you need to immediately transfer them to liking your business, right? Not liking you, liking your business. And some industries it's quicker than others, but the whole point is it's the only way you can move beyond it. And I've got a film producer in California. It's the same kind of thing. Is he had to move from being the one people expected to actually having a film crew and having different editors and different animators. So I think it's important that people need to realize that their situation is not unique. It's not like it's never happened before. It happens in every company, every single company. And so they just have to realize that yes, they're important to the business, but how can they slowly segment business development into all the pieces and realize there are a couple essentials that really matter, but everything else somebody else could do. But you have to figure out how to do those things and who to do those things and have the money to pay to have someone do those things. And then it's possible to free yourself up and expand. I mean, if Oprah can do it, then you can too, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So is there any like key points that I missed out on the work the system or the business architecture that you want to mention?
I guess probably the main thing is just for anyone who is watching this episode and is feeling like they are stuck in their business. They've been doing it a long time and they realize that they want to do things differently. They do want to have a life outside their business, right? They're sick of being married to business. Then, maybe you're going to ask us at the end, but I always tell everybody to go to my website, WTSenterprises.com. Certainly we have a download of the summary of the book, Work the System. And then, or they can go to Sam Carpenter's website, which is workthesystem.com. And then he does some videos there, free videos, and he actually has a download of the first 4 chapters of his book, Work the System. So anyways, I always recommend people get the book, get some version of the book. There's an audio book so they can start to take some steps and actually take control of their business, of their future, and make some shifts. And so that's what I'm here for. So hopefully people take that step. That's pretty easy. It doesn't cost anything.
So then I'm curious too. So then if somebody hired you, what does that look like? Is there different packages or is there different, what does that look like?
So the different packages, again, it depends on where companies are at. I mean, some of the companies I work with are truly startups, right? So they don't have anybody. And then others have hundreds of employees. And so it depends on the situation they're in. And so what does it look like? It just looks like talking to me, right? So we talk, we do an assessment, we see this is what you need. And then it's either one-on-one or they're in a small group or there's some kind of training program I take them through and help them where they're at. But I do a lot of one-on-one consulting and coaching with business owners. Sometimes I work with their management teams, work with their COO or their GM. Again, it just depends on the situation. But I like to keep things nimble for my clients to make sure that I don't sell them something they don't need. And I also package what I have based on their needs. So if they got 5 managers they want trained, that's going to be different than if they just want me to work with the new GM or the new operations manager. And so due to COVID, my remote work has expanded because now, I can work with anybody, any time zone, and it's very flexible and very easy. And we've got hours and hours and hours of training programs and templates and tools and exercises that we've taken entrepreneurs through. And so we can very much pinpoint what they need and then work with them through those areas.
Cool. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time being on the show, and I'm sure we'll have you on again. It's a very exciting topic.
Good. I had a great time.
All right.